Welcome back to the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. Today we had Greco de Valencia on with Live Oak Bank. Some of the cool stuff for this, if you're interested in listening to it, is going to be around like the environment he's seeing with acquisitions. They help a lot of pharmacy owners buy their first store or make acquisitions with some inorganic growth and buy another store. A lot of just insights into like that space. So that's something you're needing help with or something like that from just a knowledge-based perspective. He talks about acquisitions, what to be thinking about, what to be looking for, what kind of metrics matter, and then also like some of the stuff they're doing with like capital projects and things like that. So really cool, really insightful, and I think a topic that doesn't really get explored that much. So we'll take you there now. Greco, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like, one, let's just level set with everybody about like, obviously we've had tons of pharmacies work with Live Oak Bank. So, but let's just like level set for everybody, like what Live Oak Bank does, kind of where you guys play in the pharmacy space, what do you guys help pharmacies do?
We're a niche lender. I mean, that's kind of how we started out, was working in very specific industries, right? And we started out working with veterinarians, then grew into dental, and then pharmacy. So you kind of have that foundation of practice lending, let's say. Yeah. And there was always built on this theory of verticality where, a certain, let's call it department, we call them verticals. Yeah. That's all they work in the industry. So for example, with pharmacy, that's all our team does. So we're not looking at dental deals. We're not looking at any other kind of medical deals. We're only focused on pharmacy. And through the years, the bank grew in more and more verticals. And they're always in these industries where there's gaps in the availability of a bank either wanting to lend or understanding the industry. And that is, kind of what we were founded on, is trying to help these industries that normally, don't have access to capital, or banks just don't understand them, right? Because they might be unique. And that's kind of who we are. So, and as we've grown, we've really thought about, well, now we're going to be on the broader basis, really a bank for the overall general small business of America. And that's, what our foundation is now. We're really, our mission is to be America's small business bank. Okay. So that's who we are. And we really put the customer first. We put the customer experience first. And we have a saying at the company: treat every customer like the only customer. And we really try to live by that.
What are you helping pharmacies with today then, I guess? So is it like I know it's acquisitions for sure, but what else in that space of where they may need capital or something like that they're reaching out to Live Oak for?
Yeah, so primarily we are helping independent owners find financing for the project they might do. Mm-hmm. Now, a majority of what we do are primarily change of ownership. So someone looking to buy a pharmacy could be their first one. Maybe it's their second, third, fourth, whatever it might be. And we're really working with customers, be it their first time multi-store owner, on helping to navigate through that transaction through structure, how the cash flow works, due diligence items that they might need to look out for. And then that's our primary thing that we're doing. We're doing a lot of change of ownerships. Yep. We also do capital financing for working capital for growth, acquisition of commercial real estate, or what we might call rent replacement. So, an opportunity to buy the building and now you kind of get to own that asset.
Yeah,
that's
or
a
if
great
the
one.
building across the street comes for sale, it's a great spot. I want to move into it.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do some debt refinancing. So a lot of times what will happen is someone might buy a pharmacy either through perhaps a conventional lending style. Maybe it's through the wholesaler. Maybe it's a lot of times it's through seller debt. And it's time to refinance that debt, maybe to some better terms. So we'll look at doing that. We don't do a lot of startups, and there's a whole host of reasons. We can get into that at another conversation. Sure. But I think you have to have in the startup space, you got to really have a niche offering that's going to differentiate yourself, because the barriers to entry are so high. But we're really capturing the gamut of what might be needed. And, inside that financing, we think of always just traditional retail, right? But we're really playing a lot of the long-term care,
Okay.
compounding, infusion. And so we're on that broader scale of the pharmacy, and the ancillary pharmacy services that are out there.
So when I think through I just like to drill into some of those that you said, like you said, capital expenditures and things like that. So if I'm revamping my entire like compounding lab or something like that, and I know it's going to cost me XYZ because some of that equipment's super expensive, come to you, like already been a customer of yours or something like that. They come to you and be like, hey, look, man, I'm going to need about $180,000 to get all this done. Whatever that is, you guys help them with that kind of solution. Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, we are having other solutions because traditionally, I think a lot of the dollar amount that is in the pharmacy space is usually 500,000 and up.
Okay.
Most of the time you're looking to buy a pharmacy, you're looking to get working capital or recapitalization of your balance sheet, buy a building, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
It's always that 500,000 and up mark. And a solution that Live Oak Bank has addressed, not only for the pharmacy space, but for the broader small business market, is our launch of our small loans, our express loans. So those are loans that are $500,000 and below. 100,000, 200,000. That's kind of that spot. And like I said, not only just for pharmacy, but for the broader small business, that's a solution that's out there as an alternative to credit cards. Because a lot of times small businesses, they can get caught where they need that 100,000. And a lot of times that's not going to work on the credit card. So that's a solution that we've launched, Live Oak Bank Express, that is really exciting, not just to the pharmacy space, but to the broader small business.
Can you give me some, for instance, so you've seen that deployed?
Yeah. So really good example here is where you've got, let's say a chain, we've seen in the news a lot of exodus of the chains in a certain, for Rite Aid, they got out of Ohio and Michigan.
Entire states for sure.
Yeah, entire states, right? And you see the Walgreens closing. They announced they're closing about 25% of their locations. So what we've seen a lot of the times in the deployment of that express opportunity is when someone says, hey, listen, I'm picking up all these patients that are from this chain closure, and I need some capital for inventory.
Makes
Let's
sense.
call it 100 to 200,000. Maybe it's 1.5 times monthly purchases. And, maybe the wholesaler doesn't want to extend additional credit. Maybe they're going to need that infusion of capital to the balance sheet. There's a great opportunity for them to engage our express team and see if that's a good fit for them.
Yeah, especially if you're like on net, I don't know, maybe you're paying every 15 days and you're about to get a wave of patients that's going to like bloat you by another, I don't know, your terms of like $100,000 or something or more. And if one, it's complicated to run through your wholesaler to go, hey, look, for this portion of it, can I extend this 45 days or 60 days? Because that's when I'm going to get, it's an infusion of new patients, new volume, but it's also a 6-week lag till I get paid, potentially 6 to 8 week lag. So I see what you're doing. So you're kind of coming in there and helping them. Hey, look, let's give you an infusion here to take care of all of this.
Yeah.
And then you got terms on the back end.
Yeah. And the goal of the Express team, which in full transparency is a different team than the traditional pharmacy lending. I'm working with loans that are historically, 500 and up, really usually 750 and up, all the way up to $5, $6, $7 million, right?
Yep.
But what is nice is the owner gets to go directly to a team on the Express team and make an application for that. And what we're really trying to do is educate and get the word out in the space that, listen, if you've got a good business that is showing some, good profit and returns in the most recent tax year, obviously though, to say, hey, listen, I can get $150,000 is not easy to do in your existing business. And that's really what that opportunity and that solution is there for.
That makes sense. All right. So like broader, like, I don't know if broader, but like what are like, I know it's been the year of kind of the DIR hangover, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
You know the market pretty well too, as well. What are you seeing? What instruments are you seeing pharmacies tap into or use, or are you seeing more consolidation? It'd just be interesting to get your viewpoint from a lender's perspective to go, and this is what I'm seeing a lot of. And then also if you can extend it to like, here's things to think about if you're in a particular situation, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I always try to, when I'm at dinner parties with friends and you know, you talk about the pharmacy or just the healthcare space. I mean, what was last year is definitely not today.
Right.
And what is today is definitely not going to be tomorrow. I mean, it's that fluid. I don't know another industry that could possibly be that fluid, which makes it fun, but also you have to really keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on.
Right.
And you're right. I think for 22 and 23, the preparation for the DIR fee change was really on the forefront of most people's minds.
Right.
You know, what is that going to look like? How do we prepare? We did an enormous amount of outreach to our existing customers and to the broader space in general to make people aware of what is changing and, you know, to start to prepare for that. And I think a lot of people did. In 2024, what we started to see was some people now starting to have obviously that increased visibility into what the profitability is on the business and making decisions. You know, do we work with this plan? Do we stay in this plan? How do we treat this customer profile, this drug profile, the mix? And so that really started to become more and more in focus in real time. I think some of the very sharp individuals that I had an opportunity to speak with were really leveraging the technology solutions that were provided through their pharmacy software system to get a good idea about those things and to prepare. You know, and so I think that helped give them some better information so that they could manage the problem in a better fashion. You know, we thought, and a lot of people I think thought that there was just going to be just this cataclysmic, you know, big issue that occurred. And for the most part, from what I've seen, yes, there obviously has been some fallout and challenges. But for the most part, I think people have kind of steadied now to where they're at. And the good news is, for anybody that's out there looking to purchase, I think now more than ever and going forward, you know, it's not going to be so opaque. It's not going to be so nebulous. You're really going to be able to see what the revenues and profit margin of the pharmacy is in real time. Now, what we have seen in 2024 is an overall decrease in revenues, which makes sense, right? Because now DIR
it's all baked in now, right? So top line,
it's all baked in.
Probably should probably predicted to shrink. Yep.
Yeah. So we've seen that drop off. We've seen also a slight erosion, which has continued. In you know, this has been an unfortunate fact of the historical an erosion of gross profit, mainly because you've now got the DIR fee and overall some of the Med D plans have just had, you know, worse reimbursements, right?
Yeah.
And so we have seen that little bit of that erosion in the gross margin. What is, you know, I think encouraging to me is we've really seen a lot of good pharmacy owners now say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. Great. Now, how do I pivot? Where do I find the opportunities? And we've seen it in a gamut of areas. People, you know, like we said, maybe not opting into a certain plan, saying, hey, listen, I'm going to lose those patients, lose additional revenues, but I'm going to keep my margin the same. Why would I fill underwater scripts, right?
Yeah.
Those types of things. We've seen people become a little leaner with their staffing, a little smarter with their staffing, again, using those technology solutions to know, hey, well, here's our downtime. Maybe we don't need 2 pharmacists or 1.5. We can just do it with 1 there.
Sure.
So they're saving on those OpExes. And people, frankly, buying smarter, finding a way to increase gross profit per script, seeing a big rise in the use of cash opportunities.
Interesting.
Yeah, big. And I think that's going to be a thing that's going to continue into 26, 27, especially as you see, I think, some of these changes in a lot of these Medicare plans.
Are you seeing that in kind of like traditional legend drugs? Or are you looking at that? Are more people getting creative with compounding as things are like, I'll just say either unavailable or tough to get, I guess?
Yeah, in the traditional legend drugs and the traditional retail, that world, we have seen, and I think there are a few people out here that are doing pretty good programs of where, like for one instance, there's a gentleman out of Ohio by the name of Ripple Patel. He's got a company that implements essentially a cash program that the pharmacy can set up and help individuals that maybe their copays now have gone higher, and it just makes smarter for them to do a cash price. So we have seen that on legend drugs, and that's really been helpful because, things I've heard out there from some of the Medicare agents is that, the copays are going to go up in certain categories of drugs. And so I think there's a big opportunity for that. And you also see it from the bigger news is, you see Mark Cuban getting into that. And, and I think there's going to be a more demand for that. In the compounding space, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the compounding, majority is cash, but we've even seen some where they do the retail compounding and, it might be a combo in that way.
Sure.
And they have been able to jump in and do more of the cash compounds. Perhaps it's in the weight loss, perhaps it's in, hormone replacement, because I do think there is a growing space and desire out there for people to feel good. They want to do the testing. They want to know where they make it deficient. They're willing to pay for that in those compounds.
Yep. Okay, we'll pivot to like just I want to talk about a little bit about just like acquisitions and things like that. So like, what are some of the things, I guess from your perspective, when you're trying to like help a potential customer or someone who's been an established customer, it doesn't matter. When they're looking at evaluating a business to buy, what are the things you're going like, hey, look, man, you're going to flag here for these things to like make sure we if we're going to use financing to do this, like here's where we just need to be solid, or here's where you need to have a plan. Can you give us some just like guidance for folks because I do just think more this year more than most I've seen has just been the opportunity for a little bit of acquisition or consolidation in the marketplace, however you want to look at it. And so I just wanted to, if you had like things that you'd seen or that you've guided pharmacies on to like navigate that process a little more, like, I guess from just like, here's what to think about perspective.
Yeah. I like to always call it kind of like the roadmap, right?
Sure.
The roadmap of acquisition. And it first starts with identifying the opportunity and knowing why you want to do it. For the first time owner, it may be that you've been a staff pharmacist and the owner comes to you and says, hey, listen, you've been working in this pharmacy for the last 7 years and I want to retire. It's time for you to maybe potentially take it over. Maybe if you're a multi-store owner, you want to continue to grow your footprint within a certain region. So the opportunity has to be first identified and why you want to do it. Mm-hmm. And is it a good fit for you personally? Are you ready to take that leap into entrepreneurship and ownership? Because it's not an easy thing.
Yeah.
And I think people have to know what they're getting into. I think that's the first thing I always like to talk to people about. Next is, what is it that you're buying? Are you buying the assets of a company? Are you buying the stock of the company? A lot of people don't know at that point, which is fine.
Yeah.
And part of my job and my team's job is to educate them on the differences, right? What's the asking price of the business? Does it include inventory? Does it not include inventory? And once you kind of have that, then it's like, all right, let's look at the financials of what you're trying to buy, right? And we'll look at historical financials, year to dates, and we start to go through with the customer the KPIs that we see. How many scripts are they filling on an annual basis? What's their top line revenues? Cost of goods, gross margin percentage of labor, percentage of expenses. We'll drill into that rent. We'll look at add backs that might be provided if the seller has provided themselves or perhaps a broker. And we're really trying to get to, at the core, what is the adjusted cash flow of the business? Because when you're buying a business, it's all about the cash flow.
Right.
If the business generates enough cash flow to repay the debt and to continue to pay the new owner, if needed, a staff pharmacist salary if they're going to be an owner operator, and the debt service coverage ratio matches what we feel is acceptable, then the deal itself could be financeable, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that the deal is going to get done, but at least it meets some, financial criterias. Where I think some people make mistakes is they don't look at the other things that are going into it, like working capital.
Okay.
I can't tell you how many people will say, hey, listen, we want to buy this business, a broker, whoever it might be, right? Here's what the price of the business is, okay? Well, they may not be factoring in that the business, either because of how much they buy, the kind of medications they buy, or perhaps how much operating expenses from a monthly basis they may need, that working capital could add sometimes as low as a couple $100,000 to as high as $1 million of additional financing needed within the loan. Now, when you're talking about, some of the margins that we're seeing in pharmacy, you add $1 million to a loan.
Yeah, debt service payment.
Well,
yeah,
exactly. That could really change the financials of the bit of the financing, and that's something that I think we really do a lot of education on, and I think we do really well. A lot of borrowers sometimes will be like, "Oh my God, why are you giving me so much work?
Right. Why are you giving me so much money?"
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like funny. It's like they kind of think we're like trying to like pad the loan or something.
Right. I got numbers like it.
No.
Yeah.
I'm like, no. And then you start to educate them on why. And I will tell you probably about 8 out of 10 customers that we do deals for, if you go back to them and poll them, they will all say, thank God you gave me that much working capital, know? And so those are just some of the things that we do when we're looking through the nitty gritty of a deal and looking at some of those, what I call KPIs or benchmarks in a financing deal. Do you have a shorthand metric? You'd be like, hey, look, if someone's got cash flow of XYZ, like this is kind of like the financing you can think about. Like when someone's like thinking through and getting presented with an opportunity or like, hey, look, I may actually buy the store that I'm working in or something like that. Is there like any shorthand metrics, or is it always how long's a piece of string? Is always, it kind of depends. Yeah, it does depend a little bit because, it also depends on what the business has done in the prior years, what it's doing year to date. Mm-hmm. So, it does depend. I do tell people oftentimes, if they're looking to buy a pharmacy and take out long-term debt, which is really what any type of bank is going to provide you if you're doing either an SBA or a conventional loan, it's still going to be long-term debt. The business has to be the pharmacy usually has to be filling at least 150 scripts and up. That number used to be around 125, unfortunately because of a margin erosions over the years. Yeah, where we are. That number is really more like 150 and up. And so that's the first thing I kind of tell people, usually probably about 2 million and up in total revenues.
Okay.
But again, it really depends on the margin per script, right?
Sure.
So we always encourage people, whether you're going to actually use us or any bank, mm-hmm. have the conversation and we prefer that it be us, sure. Just quite selfishly.
Of course.
But have a conversation with someone who knows the industry, understands the loan structure, understands the financing structure, to know what you're getting into. I mean, at the very least, do that. Mm-hmm. Know what you're getting into. And, I wonder sometimes, you hear about a lot of independents closing at times. Maybe it was because of change of ownership. Maybe it's because they got into a startup. And, I often wonder how many of them had that conversation with someone like myself who knows the space to kind of give them insight into what they're getting into. And at the very least, know that, hey, listen, I've got to have enough working capital starting out. And I got to know what the cash flow, the risks of the business are. and have a conversation about that. Will a bank finance it? So I encourage everybody, make sure you're doing that. Don't just go in blind.
I guess from an acquisitions perspective as well, has it changed since you talked about like, hey, look, you look at revenues for sure, and you look at script count and things like that. With kind of the table on revenue being reset this year, how has that influenced, I guess, a little bit of the either output in loan valuation or business valuation, or if that's too nebulous, tell me. I guess.
I know exactly what you mean, which is basically like, hey, should it be viewed and valued in today, 2024,
sure,
as it was in 2022, 2023?
100%.
Yeah. And I have to say the answer usually is probably no. You're going to have to take a new lens on things because, how much of the business, how much DIR fees, for one, in 2024, how much was double DIR fees taken out in the first 3 months, right? So that has to be actually factored in because it was almost like a double taxation.
Yeah, so like a little bit of an ad back almost, or something like that in a way.
You're
right?
You're 100% correct.
Right?
Yeah, you're 100% right. And so knowing that is going to be critical because the first 3 months, maybe even the first 4 months of the business, it wasn't necessarily indicative of what the next 8 months might do. Right.
Yeah.
Also in some states there was a pretty big shift from what a major plan might have been. So for instance, like in California, there was a big shift on some of the Medi-Cal plans, Medicare plans that were once one PBM and now they're another. And the changes in reimbursements of those were pretty drastic. And so, you really have to kind of look at what's changed from the previous year. And that's why, you really can't just slap the standard, like, okay, everything's going to be a 3-time or 2-time multiple on it.
Right.
You really have to take a look at what's changed in the business. And I think going forward, it's going to also cause a lot of different things too. You have to look at the balance sheet. You have to look at the staffing. And so, we try to help educate that as much as we can. But it's a lot. It's just not a boilerplate.
There's just no way. Plus with how much legislation's getting passed just state to state around Medicaid reimbursement, or I think Kentucky did both Medicaid and commercial recently, I think. So if anything, hopefully they're going to see valuations go up a little bit if you're an owner from that perspective, if you decide to do anything with that. So it is interesting you bring that up because we have seen a focus, let's call it maybe a focus, on these states that have a little better Medicaid reimbursement, that might have some PBM reform in the state. And so they do become a little more, I don't want to call it, I want to be careful about choice of the word to say desirable because, I know what you mean though. Every community and every state has its equal appeal and desire. But we have seen where some of these better performing stores might fall in some of those states. So it does kind of lend to your point where, okay, if you are in that kind of state, does that deserve at times a higher valuation or support that? Perhaps maybe it does. At the end of the day, it's going to be about that cash flow and what does that stack up to on the debt service coverage for a business? Sure, that makes total sense. And I don't think it. You can't, I don't know. It's like a favorable ecosystem, and times like it's hard to call some of this stuff favorable. I know, but I know what you mean. You know what I mean though? Like there's, I guess it makes sense. Like just looking at it, if you just look at it from a dollars and cents perspective, if you're operating a little bit favorable, all things the same, a favorable ecosystem versus another one, then you would think that business probably has a little more value. And I know that's not what everybody gets into this for, per se, but man, it helps the math, I guess I would say.
Yeah. And it also, it's kind of like one of those things where you can't change where you live.
Right.
And if someone is in, let's say, a major metropolis, and that's where their business is, they have to adapt to those types of environments.
Yeah.
If you're out in more of a rural market, there's benefits there too, right? You might have access to rural rates, but there's also that constant risk of that, well, are you dealing with then just a set population? How's that population growing or not? And I think to be owners, whether you're going to be a consolidator, a seller, whoever it is, I think you're looking at both of those things, right? Some people might argue, I'm only looking at rural pharmacies. Some people might say, well, I just don't have that access in my market, right?
Right.
And so this is where I'm focused. I'm more in these more metropolis areas. Perhaps it's because it's the state that you're in or the state that you're adjacent to that you have a desire to get into. So all those things is what's going through the buyer's mind. And we as the bank who specialize in that industry, we're trying to do our best to keep up with that and understand where the opportunities lie and then collaborate with our customers about if it's a good fit or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can totally see the need to have someone like, if not you, obviously you want it to be you, someone in their network to talk through like literally what you said, like know what you're getting into, which is like, like how the like financial streams of all of this is actually working and how much cash flow it's producing.
Yeah.
It's literally how everyone stays in business and gets to serve their patients. So that makes total sense, man.
And that just doesn't stop. That just doesn't stop at the bank, right? I mean, I think you got to make sure that you also have an accounting team that knows pharmacy and can keep your books up to date in the correct way. Can't tell you how many times, and this isn't just, from my experiences, but I bet you if you put together 5 bankers that work in the pharmacy or healthcare space, they'll all have tales about, because a seller didn't have their books in order or didn't have, the correct finger on the pulse. I recently heard of one where they made a change and their accountant wasn't aware of it, and they were recording rebates one way, and they didn't realize there was a change in how that was getting reflected. So they didn't make a change in their accounting system. Well, you could imagine rebates sometimes can get pretty big. So it's like a lot of stories like that. Same with health, same with having a good lawyer, having a good representative in the legal team. You got to make sure, and then you'll hear this a lot in the space, you got to put together a good team. Equal as important as you got to make sure that you're staying up to date with the latest technology opportunities in your pharmacy. Same as with the pharmacy software system. I mean, you got to have that. You got to have that, especially in today's market.
Well, man, I think you dropped a lot of knowledge for us. It's not every day we get to really talk to someone who's like in the like financial institutional world that's actually out there trying to help pharmacies like either make dreams come true or realize some more growth, whether funding something that's organic, like, hey, look, we're going to expand something, or we're going to go move into a new place, or even inorganic and make an acquisition in some way. So I guess before I let you leave, man, I make everybody do a prescribable. And really what that is just what are you watching, reading, listening to, doing, you think somebody who listens to this or watches this would be into?
Yeah. Well, I got quite a few. I mean, I like to keep up on my reading and my listening. I guess I'll start on the fun side. In the news, I was a big Oasis fan in the '90s. They're getting back together again.
Oh, so yeah, I saw that, man.
I've been annoying my wife, walking around the house playing a bunch of Oasis all the time and doing my best Liam Gallagher accent.
Nice.
So I've been doing that. I listen to Marketplace. I think Kai Rizdal on Marketplace does a great job of bringing the economic news of the day in a fun, very salient, easy listening way. Obviously, the Fed's just made cuts to interest rates, and so he always does a really good job of kind of walking everybody through that. And he also does a great job of highlighting small businesses. So I encourage anybody, Marketplace is a great one.
We'll put that in the show notes, Brandon. Yeah, we'll put that one in the show notes. All right, cool.
Yeah. Love listening to The Daily, Daily from the New York Times. I think they have phone ones. Yeah.
I listen to that one.
And and then, I guess you could say listening to my daughter go on about she's about to turn 10, her listening to her and her friends go on about whatever it is that they're going on about. It's always kind of fun too.
Oh, it was good. It was
that's
good.
my prescribable.
That's good. That's the prescribable. I don't think I have much new. I've done so many of these back to back this week that we've crammed a lot into this week. I can't have something new every time, but I got my hands on. I got it printed out. This is going to be such a boring read, but I do recommend any pharmacist or owner read it. The FTC lawsuit towards the PBMs, like it's just there is some crazy quotes in there too that I just didn't. I was like, that's not I don't know if it's a smoking gun, but it's permissible. I mean, they're submitting as evidence. So, but it's been a kind of an eye popping at moment. It's full of legal stuff. So like. Yeah, that part's not fun, but there's just, once you get into like some of the testimony or some of the things they're citing, you really can kind of uncover a little bit of like kind of what's going on in the background a little bit. And it's just, it's pretty eye popping. It's worth a read. Keep you educated, especially if you're going to go like talking to legislators or anything like that. It's a good one in the back pocket to have to be spun up on.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, so that's the one I've been reading. Not to make it too much work, but then from a fun perspective, I reread actually. I just reread the book "Never Split the Difference" by Chris Voss.
Yeah.
Great book, and it reminded me of what you talked about with your 10-year-old. Like, my daughter was what was she? Probably 13 at the time. So like a little bit of angst, right? A little bit of like just teenage stuff. And I was a kid who grew up on a pig farm full of dudes, and so like it was just like I was working on relating to like my 13-year-old daughter who's an artist. And so it's like, cool. And so it was such a great way to keep someone talking. It was just like outside of the negotiation factors of that book, holy crap, it's such a good book on like just like literally the guy's job was just to keep people talking. It was just I used every tool in the book. Me and my daughter are super close, but that was one way I just kept her talking about stuff I had knew nothing about, couldn't relate to at all, but just makes them feel like you care. So
that's awesome. Yeah, no, I agree.
So, but man, all right, dude. Well, thanks for jumping on. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for like being a really like a trusted partner. I think over 600 is what I read. Over 600 pharmacies y'all have helped in some way, or pharmacy owners in some way. So you guys are well networked, well respected, man. I know a lot of people in the industry thankful to you guys with like helping start some dreams in some ways.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's always a nice moment when you get that really nice note. Just recently, I helped close a transaction in the Los Angeles market, and the seller and his wife called me, and they were almost in tears, just thanking us so much for helping us. So when you make that difference, either for a buyer or a seller, it really does make it all worthwhile. And my wife's a small business owner, and so I know the challenges that are out there. So anytime we can help somebody achieve their dreams, it's pretty cool. All
right, man. Well, hey, thanks for being on, and everyone else. We'll put the link that you talked about to those podcasts in the show notes. We'll put the link to Live Oak in the show notes as well. And
thanks so much.
Everybody keep going, man. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody.
You guys have a great week.
See ya.